Welcome to Sounding Board. This is a weekly program completely produced and directed by club members of Seroptimist International of Novato. The mission of the organization is to continuously help improve the lives of women and girls, both locally and globally. With that in mind, we try to pick guests who come to our program and Sounding Board that meet with that mission. And I think we've done it today. Julie Mangada is my guest. She's a research scientist at the Buck Institute. I don't know if you've ever driven up Highway 101 and looked up in the hills, the beautiful hills above Novato, and there's an interesting looking building up there. That's the Buck Institute. Beautiful building. At any rate, Julie is here because she is a total inspiration to kids everywhere to consider a future career in science. And especially we target young girls. So be thinking of that. If you have somebody out there who's a young girl or youngster, whatever, boy or girl, have them think about watching this program and listening to what Julie has to say. So Julie, I'm so excited you're here. You're a total inspiration, and you're a good friend too, and I love that part of it.
Me too.
And it's unusual to find a scientist who's caring and warm as you are. And so, of course, I don't know a lot of scientists, but you are one. So let's set the stage, Julie, and tell people, what is a research scientist?
A research scientist is somebody that uses the basic principles of science to develop a hypothesis that can then be tested. And of course, in the case of the Buck Institute, looking at extending the healthy years of life, a research scientist is somebody that uses a hypothesis to test ways not only to cure and treat disease, but to prevent disease in the first place.
Interesting, good. Well, we know nationally that we have a real problem getting young girls especially to get excited about science.
Yeah.
Or science, technology, engineering, and math, all those careers known as the STEM careers. What is it that keeps kids from being interested in science?
That's a good question, Carol. I have thought a lot about that, and I think in my experience, it's that the older students get, the more they hear that science is hard, science is difficult, and especially for the young ladies, once they get into middle school and high school, they've already developed this preconceived notion that science isn't something that girls go into, and if a girl does go into science, she's one of those, brainy girls that doesn't date much or have much fun. And, that's real frustrating for me as a scientist to see those sort of ideas in students. But the interesting thing is that if you talk to students in elementary school, perhaps kindergarten, first and second grade, they haven't yet heard that science is hard. And when I talk to those students, every single one of them wants to be a scientist, and they think, of course, that's something that I can do when I grow up. And it's not until later as they go through school and interact with, their parents and other adults, and even some of the things you see in the media on television gives you the idea that science is really hard. And it's not.
It's not. Oh.
No, it's not. It's just like learning a foreign language, and that's really all it boils down to. When I'm with my colleagues at the Buck Institute, we understand each other, we all speak the same language, but when I go out to elementary schools or high schools, I have to put a filter on that, and I have to talk in a way that normal people, non-scientists, would understand me. And once I do that, and people understand the research that we're doing, then they start to realize science really isn't that hard. It's just learning a new language.
I like that idea about learning a language, because we have lots of people around, especially in California here, who speak 2 languages.
Absolutely. Right.
And they already speak 2 languages, so to learn a 3rd one.
Exactly. In fact, I work with the North Bay Leadership Council does an algebra academy for English as a foreign language or English as a second language learners. These are middle school students. And once I explain it to them within that context, look, students, you are already fluent in 2 languages. Of course you can do science. That's like becoming fluent in another language.
That's true.
Once they get that, and then the next day I explain to them, wow, you just did molecular biology. Now you're learning the lingo. They're hooked. They love
that's
it.
Great. That's
yeah.
great. Well, how did you get started?
As a scientist,
in the career path, in the curriculum path.
Yeah, you know, I was never interested in science when I was in high school. I always thought it was too hard. And it wasn't until I was much older, gosh, maybe my late 20s, I was in college and wanted to be a veterinarian. And one of the prerequisites as a pre-vet major and a microbiology major was, of course, some of these what they consider hard sciences as opposed to the soft sciences. I started taking physics and biochemistry and trigonometry, differential calculus, and at the time it was a means to an end. I went into it with the attitude that I had to sort of suffer through it in order to fulfill the pre-vet requirements and go on to be an animal doctor. But the more I started understanding and learning, especially physics, you know, explaining how everything works, even as you're getting off of the freeway, the way the road is banked, that's a physical calculation to determine the banking of the road and the coefficient of static friction. Everything suddenly achieves a clarity when you understand the science behind it. And I started to realize that you just had to look around and open your eyes, and science was everywhere. And it wasn't intimidating and it wasn't hard because I was learning their secret language. And that's really when it started for me, was, you know, thinking I had to suffer through these prerequisite courses and then loving them. And it was a few years later, dealing with some personal family issues and a disease my mom had, that I really started to apply the things I was learning towards something that was personal and meaningful.
Interesting. Wow, it's quite a journey. Well, how long did it take you to finish your education?
Oh gosh, I was in college for 17 years.
Yeah, now that alone might seem like a hurdle when somebody's in 10th grade.
Right, but you have to understand that college is a process, just like everything else in life. Life doesn't start when you're done with school and when you get the grown-up job, when you figure out what you want to be when you're growing up. Life is a process, and sometimes the journey is just as much fun. And for me, that's how college was. I never set out to go to college for 17 years. And my family thought I was a little crazy at first, but I just loved it and I stayed with it. I did my undergraduate. I started, you know, right here in Petaluma, Sonoma County. I went to SRJC for a couple years.
That makes me feel happy.
Yeah, I love SRJC. And then I matriculated to the University of New Hampshire, and I got a degree in microbiology because I wanted to be a veterinarian.
That was your BS degree?
That was the BS in micro. And then I went on to get a master's degree in genetics, and then went to the University of Massachusetts Medical School and got a doctorate in molecular medicine, and then moved back to the Sonoma County area. And that whole journey was 17 years, going from SRJC to getting out of med school.
Now, something that you mentioned earlier on that I was not familiar with, and I've had a lot of education, and I've been in the educational background, and something that I didn't realize was that the hard science, if you're taking the hard science, you can get your degree paid for.
Yeah.
Explain that one. That should make a lot of people happy.
Right. That's a really good point, because if I had to pay for 17 years of college, my student loans would be insurmountable right now.
Yes.
But that's not the case when you go into, especially, you know, the biochemistry and physics, molecular medicine, which is what my degree is in. whatever science degree you go into where you're actually doing biomedical research and basic research, especially those that are funded by the NIH, which most major universities all have these dynamic science programs, you're actually paid to get your degree.
That is fabulous.
So
to
in my
know.
case, when I was at the University of Massachusetts medical school tuition for me was paid for. My books were paid for. Plus I was given a stipend to live off of. So
Fabulous.
I was able to pay my rent. And
So it was like a job.
it was. It was. I could have been getting paid to be there, or could have been getting paid to have any other full-time job. Only I was being paid to learn.
Yeah,
I felt like I had
fabulous.
discovered the best secret in the world.
It is.
I'm getting paid to study and get my degree. And
That's
I
great.
started my family at that time. You know, I was able to raise my son during those years, and it was great. I would do it all over again.
Clarify just a little bit for us the difference between a hard science and a soft science.
Well, the hard sciences are the canonical research paths, the ones where you think about people in the lab coats with safety glasses, and you're actually doing hypothesis-based research. And that's opposed to some of the other sciences, like maybe some of the social sciences. I'm not too familiar with those programs, but some of my colleagues from certain social science programs getting their doctorate in the social sciences were not paid as students. So by hard science, I mean doing the hypothesis-based research in a laboratory where you're writing grants and getting, say, NIH funding.
So how did you get on at the Buck Institute? I would think that's a plum job.
It is. I am so lucky to work there. I've worked there for a little over 5 years since I moved back from Boston, and I still can't believe that that's my job. It's not only an amazing place to work with wonderful colleagues, but look at where it is. I mean,
here in Nevada,
we can be in the lab and I'm looking at cancer cell lines, or I'm feeding my stem cells, and 20 minutes later I'm on the top of Mount Burdell in the middle of nowhere with the deer, and very lucky. And it was, you know, I left the University of New Hampshire and I wanted to come back to Sonoma County, being born and raised here. And when I moved back, I took a few months off to just explore my options. And the Buck Institute was one of several offers that I had.
Nice.
I had a few postdoc offers in La Jolla and at UC Davis, and I had a few other offers in industry and doing more industrial type science, and I had an offer from the Buck Institute to do stem cell research.
So fun.
So I really got lucky. Not only could I try a completely different type of research that I was so interested in, but I was able to come back home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've done the stem cell research for the whole time you've been there, or just is that
For part, yeah. My first job at the Institute was in Xiaoming Zhang's lab, and it was to do stem cell research, which was an amazing experience. I did it for 3 years and had never prior to that worked with stem cells, had never done cell culture. So for me, it was learning something completely new. But that's actually a good thing to point out to some of the younger folks that might be watching is once you're trained as a scientist, you know, for me, my doctorate is in molecular medicine, but I'm trained as a scientist, and we're all trained to speak the same language and to think a certain way, and that's how to develop a hypothesis and parsimoniously test that hypothesis.
Interesting.
So even though my degree is in molecular medicine and I spent, you know, 7 years doing transplantations and tolerance induction and immunology, I'm now hired to do stem cell research. Not because I had ever touched a stem cell before, but I was trained as a scientist.
So it was all new to you.
It was all new to me.
Right.
But
and you weren't afraid of taking it on?
No, because I was a scientist, and we all speak the same language.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And then after you were finished with the stem cells for 3 years, what did you do?
Then my postdoc appointment in Xiamin's lab ended, and I started another postdoc with Judy Campisi, who is an amazing woman. She's world famous for the work she does in cancer research, specifically cellular senescence.
And that's at the Buck again, huh?
Yeah, she's at the Buck, and couldn't believe how lucky I was to be able to work for her. Like I said, she's world famous, and you go to these conferences and people are waiting in line to talk to her.
Wow.
Because she's so well known for the work, and just an amazing inspirational woman. So I got to work for her, and I did that for 1.5 years, and that was actually a really great opportunity because I was able to pull all of the different aspects of my education and life together. I was able to use my molecular medicine and immunology background coupled with my newfound knowledge of stem cell research and apply it towards a cancer model. So it was very rewarding, and I did that for about 1.5 years, and then I slowly started to transition into more of a community outreach and public education role.
And that's where I became acquainted with you.
That's right, yeah.
So explain your current role a little bit for us.
I work with a lot of teachers and schools in both Sonoma and Marin County, developing education programs, doing outreach for kindergarten through 12th graders. I run a high school internship program in the summers at the Buck Institute. I run an algebra academy with Cynthia Murray at the North Bay Leadership Council. There's a lot of outreach that we do. And now recently, the Institute has really devoted a lot of energy and attention to education by hiring a director of education, Dr. Kristen Gates. And she is running a big education department there now. I am able to work under her. I can focus on K through 12, and she's working on developing Ph.D. programs. We would be the only nonprofit research institute in the world to offer a Ph.D. in geroscience, which is crazy exciting. Yeah, so collectively, between Kristen and I and some of the volunteers we have, we kind of like to think of our education philosophy as from K to gray.
To gray,
because
as in gray hair.
As in gray hair.
Got it.
Yeah, because you never stop learning.
Right.
You know, it's all for every age.
If somebody wanted to know more about it, they could go to the website, and I think you said it was www.thebuck.org. And I went on it the other day, and there's a little slot there for a little button there for education.
Yeah.
What would they find there? Something, resources for them?
Well, there are volunteer opportunities, and there's a description of our Summer Scholars Program. High school students can see what the program is about and how they go about applying. There are, of course, links to all of the faculty at the Institute, so people can look at the breadth and scope of all the different research paradigms we run, and there are descriptions of education opportunities, how people can get a hold of us if they want to do a tour. For example, tomorrow, Windsor High School up in northern Sonoma County is coming for a tour, and they got that information from the website.
Great. So what do you see happening in the future for you at the Buck?
It's very exciting. We're opening a demonstration lab. We've never had anything like that at the Institute before. The exciting thing for me is now when I tell people I work at the Buck Institute, it's always, oh, is that place up on the hill with the security gate?
Yeah.
And it is, but pretty soon I'll be able to say, it's the place you can come visit, you know, by the truckload. Bring your school, bring your family, bring your neighbors, and come on up. We're going to have a demonstration lab.
What goes on in a demonstration lab?
We're going to teach classes. And again, I focus on kindergarten through 12th grade. We'll be working with the Novato Unified School District to develop after-school programs that will take place in the labs. But, you know, with the whole idea of K through Gray, anybody can come into the demonstration lab. In fact, we're going to have all of our research model systems in there. C. elegans, which is a little nematode, Drosophila, water bears, even stem cells. You know, people can come in and have a tour and do some real hands-on stuff and feed stem cells. See the dopaminergic neurons that we grow from stem cells in some of our Parkinson's research and Alzheimer's and Huntington's research. So, yeah, it's going to be a real portal for us to interact with the public and really showcase the research we do up there in a way that the public can understand it and touch it and get excited about it, because in reality, everybody in this area is invested in that research, and it belongs to everybody. It belongs to the public.
That's right. Well, your life can't be all just work, Julie. So tell us what you do just for fun, for relaxation.
I'm a marathon runner.
Really?
I am, and I play roller derby.
Roller derby? No, that's what this really amazes me. Is that locally?
It is. It's out of Calskate and Rohnert Park. I play with the Resurrection Roller Girls.
RRR. There's an alliteration.
Yeah. It's an amazing group of people. I really feel blessed that I found them. It's a group of women and some men from every walk of life. There's doctors and lawyers and people covered in tattoos and people that homeschool 6 of their children. And it's really a neat camaraderie.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, we've just got a few minutes left, Julie. So if you were to wrap this up and share with the audience some major concepts that you'd like to leave with them, what would they be?
Oh gosh, a major concept. Just enjoy science. Don't be intimidated by it. It's all around us, and it's no different than learning a foreign language. Once you understand science, a lot of things make sense, and it's a great career to have. It's a great career for anybody of any age. And come visit the Buck Institute. We are in your backyard, and it's an incredible place, and I hope that people come up there and see the type of research that we do and understand that it belongs to them. The research that we do is groundbreaking, important research, and it belongs to everybody, and that's something that the community of Novato can really be proud of. And
I think so.
I want them to come up and see it, especially when we have our demonstration lab open.
Great, great.
Yeah.
Well, Julie, I'm so happy you've been here.
Thank you.
I just really have enjoyed this.
I have too. Thank you for inviting me.
Good. Well, thank you. And thank you, viewing audience, for being with us. And thank you, club members of Seroptimus, for being on the crew. And thank you, of course, Leon and Rick, being behind the scenes with Novato Public Access Television, making us always look good. Thank you.